And I'm still talking to James Melville, social and political commentator. James, just very quickly, let's talk about Vauxhall Vans. Now, the reason it's closing, with the loss of 1,100 jobs in the Luton area, very devastating for a lot of people, is that the company's made it fairly clear that it's the government's tough electric sales targets that they're forced to adhere to. And they're saying that that not only do they have to ensure that 22% of the cars they sell, or the vans, are purely electric by the end of this year. They also will be fined £15,000 for every car and £18,000 for every van, which is petrol or diesel beyond the electric target. So vicious fines if they sell too many petrol or diesel vans, and fines if they don't manage to sell enough electric vehicles. Now, the point is, the market dictates this sort of thing. Everybody knows not that much interest in electric vehicles these days, and so this company again is suffering because of an ideological government diktat, obviously coming down from that green loony, the maniac net zero secretary, crazy Ed Miliband.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening elsewhere. It's happening in Germany as well. I mean, look at what's happened with Volkswagen in Germany, where they're going through the same thing. They're shutting plants, potentially a lot of jobs will disappear. But it's also happening in other sectors, going back to farming. I mean, in Wales, for instance, with the SFS policy, which is still connected to net zero as well, where they were wanting to take out high yield or livestock land for tree growing or rewilding programs. And there was an economic impact assessment report that came out saying up to 5,000 jobs could go because of that. And now, actually, the Welsh Government, because of a lot of good pressure by the Welsh farmers, they've kicked that into the long grass. So I think it's actually up to industries, and the farmers are a good example of this. The recent protests have been extraordinary on inheritance tax, and they've got public support. I think it's up to workers, blue-collar workers in other industries will find they have got a lot of public support as well. I think the hospitality industry might well be doing the same thing in the new year, because a lot of things are coming down the tracks for them. But it's time that the public got behind our blue-collar workers and understand that they are, they are the foundations of our economy, and they shouldn't be played with by government policies that are often, going back to your point, connected, in the case of farming, but also cars, connected to net zero. And yet net zero is for the birds. Yeah. The collateral damage of net zero is extraordinary. It isn't actually environmentally friendly. I mean, what happens to the landfills in terms of solar panels and wind turbines after 20 years? They get clogged up. A lot of the components that are made with net zero, in particular electric cars, from a component called cobalt in the battery, which is plundered by child slaves from Congo. How virtuous. Yeah. And so we need to get away from the net zero zealotry. Yeah, but we're not destroying the economy.
The trouble is, absolutely, particularly with this kind of mad diktat to the car industry, to the van industry, which is going to put 1,100 people out of work. Thanks very much, Ed Miliband. Great work. So we need this government to be less ideological and more practical. Otherwise, we're all going to hell in a handcart. Very quickly, what did you make of the government's? I can barely be bothered to talk about this because it's just headline hunting. The government's big initiative on job seekers today. Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, has decided that the problem with job centres is they're a bit depressing. They're a bit sort of 70s and 80s. So she's going to modernise them. And here's the big deal, James. She's going to give job seekers like an app on their phone, and it'll be sent to them while they're walking down the street. Oh, there's the job that I wanted. This isn't going to make any difference at all, is it?
No, I tell you what's a vibe of the 70s right now. What's happening with the economy and what's happening with the private sector, and that's on the watch of this government. It's very easy for the government to sort of flower things up that ultimately don't matter. But what matters, and there's an irony about they're going to try and create this job creation program where they're willfully destroying our small and medium enterprises. And the CBI are saying that loads of companies will have to get rid of a lot of workers over the next year, almost half companies. And yet they're doing all this stuff. We've got a bunch of individuals in government who haven't got a clue how to run the economy, in particular the private sector. And it's showing. But the economic damage of this is extraordinary already, and we're only in the first 6 months. What are they going to be like after 3 years? And this is why the public are looking at this government with a lot of buyer's remorse. And going back to that petition, yeah, I don't think there's going to be an election. That's just nonsense. But what it does do is raise awareness. There's a lot of people who are miffed, to put it mildly, with this government, including a lot of Labour voters who've got buyer's remorse.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Rod Liddle has nothing but contempt for that. But I think it's a good indication of the level of dismay over this awful government. And I don't agree with Rod. Rod says that's all people who who didn't vote Labour. I think there's a lot of people in that petition who signed that petition did vote Labour, and they're dismayed by what they're seeing. I mean, they should have known better, but they've made this mistake of voting this government in, and we're going to be stuck with them basically for the next 4.5 years. There's nothing we can do about it. Be afraid, be very afraid. Just lastly, before we go to the news, we're going to talk about Elon Musk after the 8 o'clock news, folks. Before we do, the government's latest initiative on the migrant crisis that they're failing to solve spectacularly is to throw millions of pounds at more lawyers, more immigration lawyers, to get rid of the asylum seeker backlog. There aren't enough lawyers or judges apparently to deal with their cases, so what the government's going to do is take millions of pounds of taxpayers' money in order to give it to more immigration lawyers to clear the backlog. That's going to work, isn't it?
It's ridiculous. And they keep going under this £22 billion black hole. I mean, what they've done is they're creating more black holes. I mean, if you look at, for instance, the balance of payments going up almost at record levels, north of 100 billion on interest payments, market confidence is a record low on the back of this budget. They're spaffing away 22 billion in carbon capture machines. What about just planting some trees? What about actually growing the real economy, small and medium enterprises? But what they're doing is they're creating even more mountains of debt because of their own ineptitude and also their zealotry as well. Yeah. And as I said, we're only 6 months in. God help us all in 3 years' time. Absolutely.
And I'll tell you, there are 63,000 asylum seeker claims awaiting an outcome at our tribunal courts, but we need millions of pounds to pay more lawyers to handle these cases. My question would be, why do we give illegal migrants legal aid? I mean, here's an idea. Don't give them that. Then they probably won't even come here. There's a thought for you, isn't it? Absolute insanity. This government isn't doing a damn thing right, James.